Hello. I'm sorry I don't normally do three, but I am covering three chapters, and these chapters are very, uh, in other words, they cover a lot of information, and it's information that you need to know. So I am going to apologize for doing three, but this is information that is important, and it's the bulk of our competencies that we have talked about for health. So, Chapter 6, childhood illnesses, we're still talking about those. We've talked about common childhood illnesses that are chronic, like asthma, things that can be ongoing that a child deals with all the time. Diabetes is one. We've talked about communicable diseases that are diseases that can be passed from one person to another because you have to have a susceptible, well, first of all, you have to have a pathogen, you have to have a susceptible host, and then you have to have a method of transmission. And so we've also talked about precautions for how to keep communicable diseases from passing from one person to another. And we've talked about universal infection control procedures. And there again, there's a chart in the textbook, Chart 5-2, page 124, that is something that a chart that talks about how to keep from getting sick through communicable diseases. Please refer to that chart. Teachers should be provided with disposable gloves, and there is a proper way to take those off or you won't infect both hands. I don't have a pair of gloves on, but I will try to talk to those in classroom. Additionally, when I did the CPR and first aid class before, that was something they went over, is how to properly take off the gloves to keep from infecting yourself with the possible body fluids that are on the gloves. Anything like rugs, washable rugs, pillows, stuffed toys, anything like that that's been contaminated should be laundered separately from other items. Children's clothing should be rinsed out and sealed in a bag and sent home to be washed. Blood stains on surfaces must be wiped up and disinfected with a commercial germicide or a chlorine bleach solution. And these precautions are also in our rules for child care learning centers as well. And Chapter 6 goes into identifying illnesses and managing them. What are the signs? Now, here are some common illnesses that we see in the early childhood classroom. Chickenpox. Although nowadays our children have to have a vaccine before they come to a public school setting. Colds. Fifth disease. If you are a pregnant person, a pregnant woman, of course, I don't guess a man would be pregnant, I'm sorry, but fifth disease is very something that you are not supposed to be around. And influenza, which is the flu, measles, and meningitis. Those are all airborne transmitted. Excuse me, I can't talk. Early signs. Obviously, you can tell that a child is just not acting right if they're really sleepy, really tired, and obviously if they feel very hot. It might be a good idea to get their temperature checked, and if they have a temperature of 101, then they need to be, excluded from the classroom. Some other airborne transmitted illnesses: mononucleosis, mumps, roseola or sixth disease, tuberculosis, strep throat, and whooping cough. Bloodborne transmitted diseases are like HIV and hepatitis B. let's see. If you are in contact, either direct or indirect, there are, let's see, there's a table on 6-1, ringworm, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, scabies, tetanus, pink eye, or it's also called conjunctivitis, and I can't pronounce this one, cytomegalovirus, CMV, hand, foot, and mouth disease, herpes simplex or cold sores, impetigo, and head lice. Things that are, again, I've mentioned this in the previous chapter, but these are some more that are transmitted from the fecal-oral. And this is where, the diapering procedures would come in, because that's definitely one way that you would come in contact with fecal material. E. coli, encephalitis, hepatitis A, pinworms, salmonella, and let's go on to the next page. Diarrhea. Diarrhea can be a very, very serious condition for infants and toddlers, especially if it's excessive and prolonged, and that has to do with, in particular, because they get dehydrated. It is very serious. Another thing that happens with children, especially the really young preschool children, is earaches, and they're common in boys, more common in boys than girls. They gradually decrease with age, but I know my own son dealt with ear infections, and when he was an infant, and there were times that we really didn't realize that he had an ear infection until we went to the doctor, and the doctor could see it when he did the examination. Earaches are often associated with allergies or colds, feeding positions, and or foreign objects in the ear. We never had anything that we could point to that caused my son to have ear infections, other than he just had them. Lyme's disease is a tick-borne infection that is becoming increasingly more common in the United States. To prevent Lyme's disease, wear protective clothing, use DEET insecticide repellents. DEET is D-E-E-T. That's an ingredient. Bathing and inspecting the skin after playing outdoors, and removing ticks carefully and quickly. Okay, let's see what else. In Chapter 6, this is something that is discussed. I'm not really sure why it's put in this chapter, because this chapter talks about more about communicable diseases. Can't see the beginning. But we got SIDS, and I'm not really I don't understand why SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, is put in that chapter, but it's there, and I do plan to talk more about sudden infant death syndrome. There is an actual website that we will go to, and where we have a physician that will talk about SIDS. But approximately 2,200 infants die per year. It's the leading cause of death among infants between 1 and 12 months of age. Male infants are at higher risk. It has not, a specific cause has not been identified, but here are some certain factors. Sleeping position. An infant must always sleep on his or her back. Lack of maternal prenatal care. That's when mom doesn't go to the doctor when she's pregnant with the baby. Smoking or drinking alcohol or using drugs during pregnancy. Exposure to secondhand smoke. Respiratory infections. Premature birth, which is before 37 weeks. Being born to a teenage mother. Soft bedding. Blankets, bumper pads, and mattresses. And I've got a flyer that I can show you guys that shows a baby, and it points out different things that the baby needs to have and not have in the bed that it sleeps in. And basically, you've got to put the baby on its back, and no bumper pads, no soft blankets, I mean, I was surprised because it's changed a lot to protect against SIDS. Let's see. I think that is it. And I told you this last one will be short. If you have any questions, please let me know via email. There is a quiz on chapters 4 through 6. If you've read the lecture notes, you've watched the YouTubes starring me, and you have read the material in the book, please be sure you read the material in the textbook. The PowerPoints have a lot of good information on them as well. Look over those. I used those in the material that I'm going over with you now, but that will prepare you for the quiz, and ultimately we will have an exam over the entire health unit, which is chapters 1 through 6, and which covers those 4 health competencies for the course. And like I said, you all did some excellent work on the projects. Hopefully you will, and I don't doubt it, that you will do some excellent work on the health articles. I'm looking forward to hearing about some of those. We won't necessarily present. I might ask for people to volunteer, but we can talk more about that Thursday night. It's hard to get. We do have 4 more people that need to present their health project. So, but guys, I learned more from you than you realize. I didn't know a lot of information that was shared in the health projects, so I learned just as much as you guys did. Take care. Have a good rest of the week. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to prepare for Chapter 10. It's just 1 chapter. I'm going to hopefully get a YouTube lecture on about Chapter 10, and then, you know, we're going to be a little bit off of our course schedule that's on our syllabus pages 11 and 12, but we will talk about that in class and figure out how we're going to, you know, work that out. I hope you have a good Labor Day, and see you later.